Welcome to episode 2 of the Kenpo Corner. In this episode, I'm going to talk about some of the basic differences between American Kenpo, Tracy's Kenpo, and White Tiger Kenpo. They're pretty much the same system. They all come from the same family tree. Tracy's comes from Ed Parker. White Tiger is an offshoot of Tracy's Kenpo. So there's a lot of similarities between the two. They both have basically the same bones. It's just the outer surface that is different. The concepts and what they're trying to teach are basically the same. So one of the first obvious differences is the way it's taught. Tracy's Kenpo teaches a private lesson. That's all they do. They don't teach in a group class situation like the American Kenpo system. So with Tracy's, you go to one private lesson and then as many group classes as you wish. Where the American Kenpo style side is, your main education comes from the group classes that you have to attend. And depending on your instructor, they sometimes require you to attend so many group classes in order to obtain your rank. Another difference is when it comes to the way that's taught is central testing versus testing when you're ready. Usually most American Kenpo schools that I've been to and seen, they have specific dates that they do a testing for yellow belt, blue belt, so on. And then a lot of times they will have big central testing in like Las Vegas for black belts and above. Where with Tracy's, testing is just part of your regular private lesson. When you've completed the self-defense techniques, you have the concept and the understanding that the instructor is looking for, then you do a test right then and there in your private lesson. And the only time it's what we would call an open test in Tracy's Kenpo and White Tiger Kenpo is usually for your third brown and your black belts and anything above black belt. In which case they do what they call an open test, and that means that basically anybody from the public or the students can come and watch the test. And usually those tests, just like American Kenpos, can take anywhere from 2 hours to 3 or 4 hours, depending on what rank they are trying to obtain and what the actual requirements are for those ranks. Another thing is that it's not a good or a bad thing, it's just the way it's done is probably more because of the cost. Tracy's doesn't charge for test fees. So when you test for your orange belt or when you test for black belt, there is no fee. The only time you really come into a fee if you want a specialized diploma, and at the time it was from Al Tracy. You would send him the information and then you would send him some money and then he would send you a certificate. But in general, if you're the in-school, being in school, your instructor would just give you a certificate and so forth for your rank, where you didn't have to pay for it. Where some of the American Kenpo schools, they charge you per rank, per belt, they charge you the belt fee, the test fee, and the certificate fee. So like I said, this is not good or bad, this is just the way they set up their business practice versus the way that Tracy set up their business practice. The next thing that's kind of different, which is a little not as quite as obvious, is the techniques. Now, they all have the same basic ideas of the techniques with hand strike concepts, multiple hand strikes for self-defense techniques. The differences come in the names. For example, we call what American Kenpo would call twin kimono, we call kimono grab. Basically the same technique, just called different things. And so there's a lot of techniques because of the forms that are identical within both systems. They're just either called something different or they're taught slightly different as far as what the application is for, even though they look the same. The next thing is variations of techniques. Unfortunately, the Tracy's have lots of variations, especially in their orange belt. It's very heavy with variations, like A through I for a purple belt technique. Where American Kenpo, they don't have any variations. It is just the technique. Another difference comes in the upper belts. Up until recently, Tracy didn't use follow-ups until 5th black, I believe they do have them now. Before that, they were just actual self-defense techniques. where within American Kenpo is usually from about third brown, maybe even second brown, depending on your instructor and the system of American Kenpo you're in. They have follow-ups to the previous belts, usually orange, purple, and blue. So that's another big difference. Another difference is the amount of information. Tracy's Kenpo will actually give you 30 self-defense techniques per belt, except for yellow belt, which is 10. And American Kenpo will also give you, not also, but they will give you 24 techniques per belt, plus the same for yellow belt, which is orange belt. White Tiger is slightly different when it comes to this. They have 20 self-defense techniques for yellow belt, and then 30 self-defense techniques after that. So the yellow belt's a little bit more involved, and it covers a little bit more of the different things you will learn on a basic level. The next thing that is different is the forms and the sets that's learned per belt. Forms long 1 through long 5, short 1 through short 4 in some Tracy schools, not all of them, just now starting to be taught, are the same forms. Except for White Tiger Kenpo, their form short 1 and long 1 are different. It was added in later on after they started converting their system. Then you have, there are no sets in Tracy's Kenpo or White Tiger Kenpo. There are sets that are taught within the group class, and a lot of those sets are the same as some of the Parker sets, except for finger set. Finger set is still taught within the Tracy's Kenpo system. It's not taught within the American Kenpo system, because within White Tiger Kenpo, after first brown, you don't have any more forms or sets. We want you to spend more time focusing on learning how to do the technique from black belt and above, and not so much on the forms and the sets that have been added on for those belts that for rank. There is another example of blocking set. In Tracy's Kenpo, it's taught as a group class scenario, which is blocking set 1, but Tracy's calls it 5-star block. It's the exact same thing on the right side. Obviously, in group classes, they do it left side, where in the set, you do right, left, and then both sides. So that is taught in somewhat the same as within a group class, but it's not a requirement. There again, it's just an exercise or a drill that the students learn to help go from one block to the next. Another big difference is, and this one's the hardest, because if you go from a Tracy system to American Kenpo, you have to almost learn a new language, because their terminology is a lot different, and they have a lot more terminology than Tracy's or White Tiger Kenpo. For example, a fighting stance, which is what White Tiger and Tracy's call this, is called a neutral bow in American Kenpo. A hard bow, what we call a hard bow, is called a forward bow in American Kenpo. Then you have the soft bow, which is called the gravitation, or drop of body weight, which is a gravitational of marriage. So there's a whole new learn of language that you have to learn. Plus they go more involved in the different types of blocks. Like we just have a inward block in Tracy's and White Tiger. Now, depending on how you're using it in American Kenpo, depends on what they call it. You can have an inward snapping block, an inward thrusting block. You have an inward downward block. So you have a lot of different terminologies for one move, where there again we just have, it's an inward block, it's a downward block, it's an outward block. We don't put a lot of different directionals on that block or on strikes. We don't have an outward hand sword versus an inward hand sword. It's just a hand sword. And those are some of the basic differences between the American Kenpo, Tracy's Kenpo, and White Tiger Kenpo. There's a lot of other big differences, but these are the main ones. And I hope it kind of clarifies some things. It's basically all the same techniques, all the same principles. It's just taught in a different manner and with different terminologies and different requirements for each rank. Okay? Hope if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to answer for them. And thank you for joining me on my second episode of the Kenpo Corner. Until our third episode, and we meet again.